So okay, so we have the idea of open data. We have this idea of breaking down silos. We want data together. We want to release it. We want to be transparent. I want to be a platform. But let's talk about what we do on the inside. We want to be at the forefront of data analytics. So a project, okay, I like the story. So I am very fond of a project which we call WindyGrid. So we're going to tell a bit of a story here, especially because a couple of the key players are lurking somewhere in the back. So I have Brian and there's Q. Okay, good. So in the end of 2011, I had two discussions which got me thinking. One was with the Chief Operating Officer, Lisa Schrader, and she's now the Chief of Staff for the city. And she said to me, she's like, why is it so hard to get data about place? She's like, when there's an incident at, say, and I'll just use as my example, 121 North LaSalle, City Hall, right? She would have to call up all sorts of different commissioners and say, you know, Commissioner of Buildings, I need to find out all of your abandoned buildings at this location. Or Commissioner 311, you know, send me a report. And then that's crazy. That's just data everywhere. And she's like, why is this so hard? Because even worse than getting the reports right, how would they send the data to her? They'd probably email a PDF, or maybe they put in like one of those cool inter-office folders. Those are really nice. We have those. I'm going to probably steal them. Oh, press here. Didn't mean to leave it on my desk. So that's crazy. And she's like, why is it so hard? So she points at me and she's like, okay, you're the data czar. Go fix it. Okay. So then I had a second discussion with Felicia Davis, who was the first deputy chief of staff at that point for public safety. And she was trying to look at the interdisciplinary nature of crime, right? All the things we talked about. We talked about economics, we talked about business licensing, all those sorts of things, right? And she's like, I can't get everything I need together. And the mayor's telling me, we need to rethink all of these different pieces, yet the data is getting in the way. And this is one of the things that really drove me crazy, especially when I became CIO, because, so I also became CIO a year ago, that's not relevant. But technology should not inhibit, right? Technology, people shouldn't worry about their email working. People shouldn't worry about getting data into reports. They should be able to get what they need, get it now, and do their job. Our job in government isn't to sit around and wait for IT to do things for us. So those were interesting challenges. But here's sort of the third piece. So people remember we had this event coming up in May of 2012. Anyone? 2012.
G8.
NATO, right? So big thing coming, right? So one of the things that was really interesting is as we were, a lot of work was done by the city to get ready for the NATO summit. And things like this can come at enormous cost. So what's one of the things when you're thinking about a big event that you're worried about? It's situational awareness. What is going on in a given place at a given time? So there was a lot of talk about what sort of situational awareness technology we should get. And how does the city typically get technology, right? Okay, so I'm going to drink some Diet 7-Up and someone will give me an answer. How do we get technology?
Someone dumps it on you after you fill out an RFP?
Right, the RFP. So, okay, so you win a Diet 7-Up. So you typically, you release an RFP, you encumber some money, right? And you encumber like $20 million, and you do a big RFP, and then there's a competitive procurement, right? And that takes forever. So it's the end of 2011. NATO's 5 months away. I don't think spending like $20 million on situational awareness is a good use of your money. And that was in the back of our mind, and people were looking to me because I came from that sector, and They're like, so how are we going to solve this? So we had those three pieces all together. And then this is where the fun happened. Because working on a different project, I had a little group of friends. And my little group of friends, engineering types, okay, so I'll put on my glasses again, and let's see who's here. We have Joe and Corey, and then Ryan, I mentioned Q, and this is the group which the press folks in the mayor's office affectionately called the Nerd Herd. And I would hang out with the Nerd Herd, and we would talk about Twitter classification problems, things like that. And so in one of our Nerd Herd meetings, I mentioned I'm trying to solve the issue of taking large unstructured data and bring it together spatially. And I think it was Ryan, right? You brought up Mongo?
Sure, probably.
Okay, so he'll just take the credit. So Ryan suggested in the meeting, why don't we play with Mongo, MongoDB, and test out the spatial indexing function? And so here was the idea, and this is where we're showing our innovation in Chicago. Instead of going out and spending millions and millions of dollars doing an RFP, a procurement, which would never be implemented in time and would be some big box software, the idea was take our spatially enabled transactional data, things like 911, 311, business licenses, GPS, all of this different data, and start writing ETLs and sucking it into a MongoDB cluster, right? And then it would be in one place. And then you can, once it's in one place, because we've broken down our silos, but we've done it in a different way, we would then be able to ask this collection a question. We'd say, tell me the story of 121 North LaSalle. And it would know everything. So this is a crazy approach, because what are you supposed to do in government? You're supposed to replace all your systems and get one commercial big box thing, which will cover everything. Yeah, no, that was a terrible idea. So what we did was, and this is where it got fun. So my office, since I was still in the mayor's office at that point, in my physical office, imagine a dark room with your classic sort of green screens, Unix console, and built out the framework of a distributed MongoDB cluster. We started to suck in 911 data. We started to take all of this data. And then the magic moment happened. We asked the data a question about place, and it told us the story of place. And oh my God, we did it on our own. We didn't get a consultant. So that was nuts. So what did we do? Over the ensuing months, we kicked off a project. And this is another, I feel bad because Danielle isn't here, because Danielle and I worked on this project every day for the march to NATO, because our target was to have a sort of alpha beta up for the NATO summit. So the first step was, you build out MongoDB cluster, fine, virtual service, blah, blah, blah. But then start hooking it into all of those systems we talked about, and then bring them back. And I'm so oversimplifying the pain here. Because think, old systems, all sorts of coordinate systems, all sorts of naughtiness, like long debates about how many points to the right of the decimal point you're going to use for a coordinate, because the PCAD system uses a ton. The air systems, they're a little generous in their rounding. So we brought it together, and it was happy, and it was working, and the data was there. But then we had this sort of epiphany that the Unix console that I really like isn't really good for the end user. I wasn't going to say, hey, Lisa Schrader, you're going to log into Mongo and do a little JavaScript and bang out a query. So, and that's why Danielle's sort of very good here. What we did is we built a Mongo service in the middle, and then created a map viewer. And this was another made by the Nerd Herd, in which the obvious choice to use with Mongo was what? Google, right? People use Google on top of Mongo, and that's great, but you can't really do that when you're dealing with public safety, right? Because I love my friends at Google, but I can't tell them everything we're doing. I need to have a couple secrets. But we realized that that most governments have the same GIS software. It's Esri, right? ArcGIS. It's a commercial product that's just very common. And we took what you're seeing here is the viewer. It's an Esri viewer, and what it does is it lets the user interact with Mongo, and it lets you do a couple very specific things. One is situational awareness. Okay, tell me what is happening now. So in this case, you have a point with a radius somewhere in the city, and within that radius, you can say, if anything comes in from my choice of data sets, let's just use 911, it's going to tell you right away something is happening within your area of interest. Could it be 311? And we structured each of these to grab the data as fast as possible. Like 911, you'll have it 30 to 60 seconds, right? Tweets, you'll have them very fast. 311's all sorts, what, like 15 minutes or something like that. But you have all of this data, and it's brought together in one place based on space. You can use your pointer radius, you can create an ad hoc polygon, you can say, tell me everything going on citywide. It's telling you what is happening spatially in the city. Well, it's something, you know, I've gotten, people tell jokes, they're like, yeah, Friday night, I'll be at home, I'll flip on WindyGrid, pour a glass of wine, and it's good times. So, yeah, I might have done that too. But, but point two is, besides knowing what's going on right now, you need to be able to know what's happened in the past. You remember how I talked about data should not inhibit. Data should not be hard. So if you want to know the story of 121 North LaSalle, we put all of the data into Mongo and we leave it there. It is there waiting to be accessed by you. If you want to pull up my house and look at the 311 distribution over the past couple of years and have a quick histogram, bam, it's there. And that's what we designed. But the third piece, and this is the real beauty behind the system, is forget the mapping view here. That is to help 99% of our users who don't care about the technology. They care about getting information from the data we have. But the beauty is the foundation. All of this data together. Like one of the things that Tom does is a platform that we really embrace in the city is R. And I'll go into an R tangent. Well, actually, it's coming. I feel it coming. So you can take R, hook it directly into Mongo, and when Tom needs to solve a problem or answer a question for the mayor's office, it's all sitting right there. There's no longer any excuses. And why are there even less excuses? And this is when I'm going to get onto my sort of R soapbox. One of the things that people said to me early on was, you can't do advanced analytics in the city because you can't afford it. That is BS, okay? So early on, they're like, oh yeah, if you need to do data mining, you need to get one of the commercial products. And there's some I really like. Like some of them are so easy to teach. It's great. But some of them cost $14,000 a seat. Okay? We can't afford that. But that is not an excuse. It's just, I didn't know about R until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I was at the police department at the time. I was working on a 911 call problem. And I kept on breaking it because when I'm live streaming, I won't tell you the platform, whatever. And I kept on crashing the system. And so I was taking the kids out with a friend of mine who teaches at the Harris School, and I'm like, I keep on using this and I'm breaking it. And he's like, look, moron, try R. And I did, and it worked great. And so in the first year, one of the things we did in the city is we taught R classes So on the 11th floor of City Hall, which we have the biggest sort of conference room there, we brought in people, and then we brought in grad students from U of C, and we taught our classes, because this can't be an excuse. We can't say we're not going to do our business better because we can't afford it when there is one of the best platforms out there. So